Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your stories inspire us. Now let's dive into today's captivating tale. The smell of burnt toast filled the pristine white kitchen of Liam Carter's modest home, mingling with the bitterness of his third cup of coffee. At 42, Liam wasn't wealthy but lived a steady life as a senior software developer for Summit Solutions. His work hours often stretched late into the night, pouring every ounce of his expertise into the sleek, ambitious fashion tech startup Auraverse, co-founded by his wife, Sophia. This morning, though, was different. Liam wasn't just tired, he was emotionally drained. The sharp click of heels echoed in the hallway, snapping Liam out of his thoughts. Sophia strode into the kitchen like a whirlwind of confidence, her perfume trailing in her wake. She was stunning, wearing a designer suit that screamed success. Her hair was styled in a flawless bun, her makeup applied with precision. Yet her expression was impatient. "Where's my presentation binder?" Sophia demanded, rifling through the cluttered counter. "And Liam, please tell me you handled the venue lighting for the launch." Liam calmly slid a black leather binder from a pile of documents. "It's right here," he said, his voice even. "And the lighting is confirmed. I coordinated with the venue last week." Sophia barely acknowledged him, her focus shifting as her phone buzzed. A text lit up her screen, and a smile flickered across her lips. "Julian locked in another investor," she announced, her tone electric. "He wants me to meet them for breakfast." At the mention of Julian Locke, her business partner, Liam's jaw tightened. He had noticed how Sophia's demeanor softened whenever Julian came up. Over the past year, their late-night meetings and secretive conversations had grown frequent. Julian was suave, rich, and charming, the polar opposite of Liam's quiet, hard-working demeanor. "What about the code review we scheduled for this morning?" Liam asked, masking the simmering frustration within him. "Auraverse AI system still needs optimization before launch." Sophia waved dismissively. "Can't we do it tonight? This investor is critical for our expansion plans." "Our expansion plans?" Liam echoed under his breath, the words tasting bitter. He gave her a stiff nod. "Sure." Sophia grabbed her designer bag and breezed toward the door. "Oh, and don't forget my dry cleaning. I need that black Valentino ready for the presentation." As the door shut behind her with a sharp click, Liam stood motionless in the quiet kitchen. The faint scent of her expensive perfume lingered in the air, blending with the acrid smell of burnt toast. He reached for his phone and opened a secure email account Sophia knew nothing about. Attached were 3 new reports from the private investigator he'd hired. Lunch meetings that ran suspiciously late. Hotel check-ins. A photograph of Sophia and Julian walking hand in hand into an upscale suite downtown. Liam's unease hardened into something colder: determination. He wasn't a man of rash decisions. His strength lay in his methodical mind, and Sophia had underestimated him. She and Julian thought they had outsmarted him, believed he was nothing more than a reliable, overworked coder. They would soon learn how wrong they were. Liam set his coffee down and opened his laptop. He typed a sequence of commands, accessing the back-end systems of Auraverse. Months of careful preparation had led him to this moment. Hidden in the lines of code were backdoors, protocols, and a digital arsenal designed to dismantle everything Sophia and Julian had built. As he scrolled through the company's files, a new message popped up on the screen. It was from Julian, addressed to Sophia. "Can't wait for tonight. You're incredible. Let's celebrate our future over dinner." Liam's lips curled into a grim smile. 4 years he had supported Sophia, built her empire, and stood by her side despite her growing disdain for him. But now it was time to reclaim his power. The quiet coder she had dismissed was about to become her worst nightmare. The evening passed uneventfully, or so it seemed to Sophia and Julian. Liam, however, worked silently in the shadows. He started by logging into Auraverse systems. Years ago, when he first developed the company's infrastructure, he had built hidden access points into every critical system. Now he activated the protocols he had embedded, a digital time bomb ticking in the background, invisible to anyone but him. Sophia returned home late that night, laughing softly as Julian accompanied her to the front door. Liam, seated in the dark of his home office, listened to their murmured conversation through the discreet microphones he had installed weeks ago. "We should be careful," Sophia said, her voice low but tinged with amusement. "Liam might come home." Julian's laughter was cold, dismissive. Your husband? Please. He's probably buried in code, oblivious as always. The venom in their words didn't hurt Liam, it fueled him. The following morning he moved through his routine like a ghost, his mind sharp despite the lack of sleep. He attended meetings at Summit Solutions, mentoring junior developers and reviewing projects. To his colleagues he appeared unchanged, as calm and dependable as ever. But beneath his composed exterior, Liam's plan was already in motion. That afternoon he received an update from his private investigator. Sophia and Julian had finalized arrangements for their next investors' meeting, confident that their future was secure. Liam chuckled softly. Their confidence would soon be their undoing. Later that evening, Liam worked late again, this time finalizing phase 1 of his revenge. But as he prepared, he allowed himself a rare moment of indulgence, a glimpse into the life Sophia thought she had hidden from him. Through his surveillance feeds, he watched as she entered Julian's apartment. They kissed passionately by the window, their silhouettes illuminated by the city lights. The sight stirred a cold rage within Liam, but it also gave him clarity. These moments, captured in sharp detail, would soon serve as the ultimate evidence of their betrayal. Julian's arrogance, Sophia's cruelty, they would be their undoing. As the night deepened, Liam activated the first sequence of his plan. Lines of code executed flawlessly, sending subtle ripples through Auraverse systems. Funds began shifting, emails were intercepted, and servers were primed for collapse. By the time Sophia and Julian realized what was happening, it would already be too late. For now, Liam remained the quiet observer, working in silence, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The following morning was uneventful for Sophia. She left early, her mood buoyant after another late night with Julian. Liam, however, had barely slept. His mind was sharp, his focus unwavering. He had spent the night refining every aspect of his plan, ensuring no detail was overlooked. Revenge wasn't just a reaction, it was an art, and he intended to execute it flawlessly. At his desk at Summit Solutions, Liam maintained his usual calm demeanor, engaging in discussions about upcoming projects and mentoring junior developers. He was the picture of professionalism, but beneath the surface he was orchestrating chaos. His colleagues would never suspect that the quiet, dependable coder was setting the stage for something catastrophic. That evening, as Sophia prepared for a dinner date with Julian, Liam was in his office, typing commands with precision. The first cracks in Auraverse's foundation were beginning to show. A series of subtle glitches appeared in the system, small enough to go unnoticed by most but significant enough to disrupt operations. Customer profiles became inaccessible, internal communications experienced delays, and financial reports contained inexplicable errors. Sophia and Julian, preoccupied with their own ambitions, failed to see the warning signs. Later that night, Liam received an update from his private investigator. Sophia and Julian were dining at an upscale restaurant downtown, their table secluded and intimate. The investigator provided a photo of them holding hands, their expressions filled with confidence and anticipation. Liam studied the image for a moment before setting it aside. Confidence would make their fall all the more satisfying. By the time Sophia returned home, the house was dark. Liam had already gone to bed, or so she thought. In reality, he was in his office, watching through the surveillance feeds as she quietly entered their bedroom. Her movements were careful, almost rehearsed, as she removed her jewelry and slipped into bed. Liam noted every detail, his expression neutral. He had become a master at hiding his emotions, a skill that would serve him well in the days to come. The next morning, Sophia awoke to find Liam already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the scent of sizzling bacon. She offered him a distracted smile, her mind clearly elsewhere. "Busy day ahead?" Liam asked casually as he handed her a cup of coffee. Sophia nodded, scrolling through her phone. "Julian and I are finalizing the investor presentation. It's crucial we get everything right." Liam watched her closely, his expression unreadable. "I'm sure you will," he said. "You've always been good at presentations." Sophia glanced at him briefly, her smile faint. "Thanks, Liam. I appreciate that." As she left for the day, Liam returned to his office, his mind racing. The second phase of his plan was ready to launch. With a few keystrokes, he initiated a sequence of commands that would further destabilize Auraverse systems. Financial transactions were rerouted, critical data was encrypted, and key accounts were locked. The disruption was subtle but growing, like cracks spreading through a glass pane. Sophia and Julian, consumed by their own plans, remained oblivious. They were too focused on their ambitions to notice the storm brewing around them. Liam, however, noticed everything. He was the silent architect of their downfall, working with meticulous precision to ensure their destruction was complete. As the week progressed, the chaos within Auraverse intensified. Employees began reporting issues with the system, clients expressed frustration over delays, and investors grew increasingly concerned. Sophia and Julian scrambled to address the problems, their confidence beginning to waver. Liam watched from the shadows, his satisfaction growing with each passing day. One evening, as Sophia sat in their living room reviewing financial reports, Liam approached her with a glass of wine. She accepted it with a tired smile, unaware of the irony. "You seem stressed," Liam said, his tone gentle. "Anything I can do to help?" Sophia shook her head, her focus on the reports. "It's just some glitches in the system. Nothing we can't handle." Liam nodded, his expression sympathetic. "I'm sure you'll figure it out. You always do." Sophia offered him a faint smile before returning to her work. Liam watched her for a moment, his mind racing with thoughts of what was to come. The quiet coder she had dismissed as weak and unimportant was about to show her the true extent of his capabilities. Sophia's confidence began to fray as the week wore on. The glitches in Auraverse systems were no longer minor inconveniences but full-blown disruptions. Customer complaints poured in, contracts were delayed, and even the most loyal investors started expressing doubts. Sophia and Julian worked late into the night, trying to salvage the situation. Yet every solution they attempted seemed to unravel further. Liam, meanwhile, maintained his unassuming facade. At work, he reviewed code, attended meetings, and even found time to mentor junior developers. His colleagues remarked on his calm demeanor, unaware of the chaos he was orchestrating behind the scenes. He was playing the long game, and every step brought him closer to his ultimate goal. One evening, as Sophia paced the living room, phone in hand, Liam watched her from the doorway. She was speaking with Julian, her voice tight with frustration. "This can't all be a coincidence," she said. "Someone's targeting us. The timing is too perfect." Julian's voice was sharp on the other end. "We don't have time for conspiracy theories, Sophia. Focus on fixing the system. We need to show the investors we're still in control." Sophia sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I'm trying, Julian. But it feels like we're sinking." Liam stepped into the room, making his presence known. Sophia glanced at him, startled, before quickly ending the call. "I didn't hear you come in," she said, her tone defensive. "I didn't mean to interrupt," Liam replied, his voice measured. "You looked like you could use a break." Sophia forced a smile, but Liam could see the cracks in her composure. "Just work stress," she said dismissively. "You know how it is." "I do," Liam said, his tone almost sympathetic. "But don't worry. I'm sure everything will work out in the end." His words lingered in the air long after he left the room, a subtle reminder that nothing was as it seemed. That night, Liam activated the next phase of his plan. Through the back doors he had built into Auraverse systems, he accessed confidential files and communications. He compiled emails, financial records, and private messages, creating a dossier that exposed every questionable decision Sophia and Julian had made. The evidence painted a damning picture of fraud, manipulation, and betrayal. The following day, Liam's private investigator sent him an update. Julian had arranged a meeting with a potential investor, desperate to secure additional funding to keep Auraverse afloat. The meeting was scheduled at a luxury hotel downtown, a location Liam knew all too well. He smiled grimly, knowing the situation was unfolding exactly as he had anticipated. As Julian prepared for the meeting, Liam made a subtle adjustment to Auraverse financial systems. A critical account was frozen, leaving the company unable to access the funds it needed to cover its expenses. The investor, upon discovering the instability, canceled the meeting. Julian was furious, but there was nothing he could do. The walls were closing in. Sophia, meanwhile, was unraveling under the pressure. She snapped at employees, lashed out at Julian, and even began avoiding Liam entirely. Her once meticulous appearance became disheveled, her confidence replaced by desperation. Liam observed her transformation with a sense of grim satisfaction. The woman who had betrayed him was now facing the consequences of her actions. That evening, as Sophia sat in the kitchen, staring blankly at her laptop, Liam joined her. He placed a cup of tea in front of her and sat down across the table. "You've been working too hard," he said softly. "You need to take care of yourself." Sophia looked at him, her eyes weary. "I don't have a choice," she said. "If we don't fix this, everything we've built will collapse." "Everything you've built," Liam corrected her, his tone deceptively gentle. "I've been watching you pour your heart into this company. It's impressive, really." Sophia frowned, sensing something in his words she couldn't quite place. "What are you trying to say?" "Nothing," Liam said, his expression neutral. "Just that you're stronger than you think." Sophia's gaze lingered on him for a moment before she returned to her laptop. Liam watched her silently, knowing she was too consumed by her own struggles to see the trap closing around her. The next morning, Auraverse servers experienced a catastrophic failure. Entire sections of the company's infrastructure went offline, paralyzing operations. Clients demanded answers, investors panicked, and employees scrambled to restore functionality. Julian and Sophia worked around the clock, but their efforts were in vain. The damage was too extensive. Liam meanwhile remained calm. He continued to go about his daily routine, projecting an air of normalcy. But in the privacy of his office he monitored the chaos in real time. Every failure, every desperate attempt to salvage the situation, was a testament to the effectiveness of his plan. As the week drew to a close, Sophia and Julian found themselves at their breaking point. Their once grand ambitions lay in ruins, their reputations tarnished beyond repair. They had underestimated Liam, dismissed him as nothing more than a quiet coder. Now they were paying the price for their arrogance. One evening, as Sophia sat alone in the living room, Liam approached her. He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" he asked. Sophia looked up at him, her eyes filled with frustration and exhaustion. "Do I look okay?" she snapped. Liam's gaze was steady, his voice calm. "I just wanted to check on you. It seems like you're carrying a lot on your shoulders." Sophia sighed, rubbing her temples. "It's just work. It's falling apart and I don't know how to fix it." "Maybe it's time to let go," Liam said quietly. "Sometimes the best thing we can do is walk away." Sophia stared at him, her expression a mixture of confusion and suspicion. But before she could respond, Liam turned and walked away, leaving her alone with her thoughts. As the night deepened, Liam sat in his office, preparing for the final phase of his plan. The time for subtlety was over. It was time to bring everything crashing down. He typed a sequence of commands, his fingers moving with precision. The quiet coder she had dismissed was about to become the architect of her destruction. The morning light poured into the room, illuminating the chaos that had become Sophia's life. She sat at the dining table, surrounded by documents, her laptop open to yet another error screen. Julian's name flashed on her phone for the fourth time in an hour, but she ignored it. She had no answers to give him, no solutions to their unraveling empire. Her confidence, once unshakable, now seemed as fragile as glass. Upstairs, Liam sipped his coffee in his office, watching the events unfold on his multiple screens. The final phase of his plan was well underway. Auraverse systems had been fully compromised, its finances drained, and its investors were withdrawing support in droves. It was only a matter of time before the full collapse became public knowledge. Sophia's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Julian but one of their biggest investors. She hesitated, then picked up. "Mr. Carmichael," she said, trying to inject some authority into her voice. "I was about to call you." "No need," came the curt reply. "I'm pulling my funding effective immediately." Sophia froze. What? "We're resolving the issues as we speak." "Don't insult my intelligence, Mrs. Carter," Carmichael interrupted. "The reports I've seen show systemic failures. This isn't a glitch, it's a disaster. And then there's the matter of the leaked emails." "What emails?" Sophia asked, her voice trembling. "The ones exposing your financial mismanagement, your attempts to sideline your husband from the company, and," he paused, his voice dripping with disdain, "your affair with Mr. Locke." Sophia's breath caught. "I don't know where you're getting this information, but it's completely false." Save it. I've already forwarded everything to my legal team. You'll be hearing from them. With that, the line went dead. Sophia stared at her phone, her hand trembling. The room seemed to close in around her, the walls pressing down like an invisible weight. She clutched the table for support, her mind racing. Who could have done this? Who had access to such damning information? Downstairs, the front door opened and Julian stormed in, his face a mask of fury. He slammed his phone onto the counter, its screen cracked from the force. "Do you have any idea what's happening?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "Investors are pulling out left and right. The media's gotten wind of our problems. And those emails, where the hell did they come from?" Sophia stood, trying to steady herself. "I don't know, Julian. I just got off the phone with Carmichael. He's pulling his funding too." Julian raked a hand through his hair, his usual composed demeanor completely shattered. "This isn't just bad luck, Sophia. Someone's sabotaging us." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker of unity, the shared realization that their world was collapsing around them. But that flicker was quickly extinguished as suspicion crept in. "Did you tell anyone about our plans?" Julian asked, his tone accusatory. "Anyone who might have had access to this information?" Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Are you seriously blaming me right now? You're the one who pushed to sideline Liam. You're the one who insisted on cutting corners with the investors. And you're the one who gave Liam access to everything when we started Auraverse." Julian shot back. "He built the infrastructure. For all we know, he's the one behind this." Sophia's stomach dropped at the suggestion. She hadn't considered Liam as a suspect, not seriously. He was too quiet, too dependable, too harmless. But now, as Julian's words sank in, doubts began to surface. "No," she said, shaking her head. "Liam wouldn't do this. He's not capable of something like this." Julian laughed bitterly. "Really? The same Liam you've ignored, belittled, and betrayed for years? Don't underestimate the quiet ones, Sophia. They're the ones you have to watch out for." Sophia's mind reeled. Could Liam have known about her affair? About the plans she and Julian had made to edge him out of the company? She thought back to the past few weeks, to the subtle shifts in his behavior. He had seemed so calm, so composed. But now that calmness took on a different meaning, a chilling one. "I need to talk to him," she said, more to herself than to Julian. Julian grabbed her arm, stopping her. "Don't. If he's behind this, confronting him won't fix anything. We need to focus on damage control." But Sophia pulled away, her resolve hardening. "I have to know." She found Liam in his office, sitting at his desk, his back to the door. The room was eerily quiet except for the faint hum of his computer. She hesitated, then cleared her throat. "Liam?" she said softly. He turned, his expression neutral. "Sophia. What's wrong?" She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest with me." Liam leaned back in his chair, folding his hands in his lap. "Of course." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Are you the one behind everything that's happening to Auraverse?" For a moment, Liam didn't respond. He simply watched her, his gaze calm and unyielding. Then slowly he smiled, a cold, calculated smile that sent a shiver down her spine. "Why would you think that?" he asked, his tone almost amused. "Because it makes sense," she said, her voice trembling. "The timing, the leaks, the precision, it all points to someone who knows the system inside and out. Someone like you." Liam stood, moving toward her with deliberate slowness. "And if I were behind it," he said, his voice low, "what would you do?" Sophia took a step back, her heart pounding. "Liam, please. If this is about what happened between us." "This isn't about what happened between us," Liam interrupted, his tone icy. "This is about what you did. You took everything I gave you, my time, my talent, my trust, and used it to build a life with someone else. Someone who thought he could replace me." Sophia's breath hitched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I made a mistake." Liam's smile faded, replaced by an expression of cold detachment. "You didn't make a mistake, Sophia. You made a choice. And now you'll live with the consequences." Before she could respond, Liam brushed past her, leaving her alone in the office. Sophia sank into the chair he had vacated, her mind spinning. She had underestimated him, dismissed him as weak and unimportant. But now she realized the truth. Liam wasn't weak. He was the storm she hadn't seen coming. Sophia sat frozen in Liam's office, his parting words echoing in her mind like a haunting melody. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the desk. For the first time she felt the weight of the choices she had made, not just the affair, but the countless ways she had dismissed and belittled the man she once claimed to love. She had underestimated him, and now she was paying the price. Her phone buzzed on the desk, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Julian again, his name flashing angrily across the screen. She let it ring, unable to face his questions or accusations. What could she possibly say? That the man she betrayed had systematically dismantled everything they had built together? That Liam had turned out to be not just the quiet coder they had mocked but the architect of their destruction? When the call finally stopped, Sophia forced herself to stand. She needed answers, and she needed them now. Summoning what little courage she had left, she stormed out of the office, heading toward the one place she knew Julian would be, the penthouse office he had rented to impress their investors. By the time she arrived, Julian was already pacing the room, a half-empty glass of scotch in his hand. His face was red with anger, his usually slicked-back hair disheveled. He turned to her as she entered, his expression a mix of fury and desperation. "Did you talk to him?" he barked, slamming the glass down on the marble counter. "Is he behind this?" Sophia hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I don't know," she lied, her voice shaking. "But it's not a coincidence, Julian. He knows everything, about us, about the company." Julian let out a bitter laugh, running a hand through his hair. "Of course he knows. I told you this would happen. You let him into everything. You gave him access to our systems, our finances. Hell, he probably knows what we had for breakfast this morning." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Don't you dare put this all on me. You're the one who pushed me to keep him out of the loop, to cut him out entirely. If I hadn't—" "Don't," Julian snapped, his voice sharp as a whip. "Don't act like you weren't on board with this. You wanted him out as much as I did. Now look at us." Sophia clenched her fists, anger rising in her chest. "You know what, Julian? Maybe this is exactly what we deserve. We used him. We lied to him. We betrayed him. And now he's destroying us," Julian finished, his voice quieter now, almost defeated. He slumped into a chair, his head in his hands. "We're finished, Sophia. It's over." Sophia refused to accept that. She wasn't the type to roll over and give up. She had built Auraverse from the ground up, sacrificed years of her life for it. She wasn't going to let Liam, or anyone, take it away from her. "There has to be a way to stop him," she said, pacing the room. "We need to figure out how he's doing this. If we can—" "What? Hack him back?" Julian sneered, his words dripping with sarcasm. "Face it, Sophia. He's 10 steps ahead of us. We're outmatched." Sophia's mind raced, desperate for a solution. Then it hit her. "The investors," she said suddenly. "If we can convince them that this is all a smear campaign, that Liam is sabotaging us out of spite." "And how exactly do we prove that?" Julian cut in, his tone biting. "Do you have any evidence? Any proof at all? Because all we've got are crashing systems and leaked emails that make us look like villains." Sophia flinched at the word villains, though she couldn't deny its truth. "We just need time," she insisted. "If we can stabilize the systems, we can—" "Time?" Julian barked out a humorless laugh. "We don't have time, Sophia. The investors are pulling out faster than we can count. And once the media gets a hold of this, we'll be lucky if we're not facing lawsuits, or worse." The gravity of his words settled heavily between them, silencing any further argument. For the first time, Sophia felt the full weight of her failure pressing down on her. Liam wasn't just dismantling their company, he was dismantling their entire lives. Back at the house, Liam sat in his office, watching the live feeds from his surveillance system. He had seen Sophia leave earlier, had tracked her arrival at Julian's penthouse. Now he observed their heated argument through the discreet cameras he had planted weeks ago. Their desperation was palpable, their unity crumbling under the weight of their shared guilt. Liam leaned back in his chair, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. He had spent years being the silent, supportive husband, the man who worked tirelessly in the shadows while Sophia and Julian took the credit. They had underestimated him, dismissed him as nothing more than a pawn in their game. Now they were realizing just how wrong they had been. His phone buzzed with a notification, drawing his attention back to the screen. It was a message from his private investigator, along with a photo attachment. The image showed Julian meeting with a known corporate fixer, a man infamous for his underhanded tactics and willingness to do whatever it took to resolve issues. Liam's smile widened. So, Julian was trying to fight back. Good. He welcomed the challenge. He typed a quick response to the investigator, instructing them to monitor the fixer's movements. If Julian wanted to play dirty, Liam was more than prepared to meet him on his level. After all, he hadn't spent years building Auraverse infrastructure without learning how to protect himself. As the night deepened, Liam returned to his computer, refining the final phase of his plan. The time for subtlety was over. By the end of the week, there would be no doubt in anyone's mind who held the upper hand. He was no longer the quiet coder they had underestimated. He was their reckoning. The next morning, Julian stormed into his penthouse office with the corporate fixer, Damien Cole, a man known for pulling miracles out of catastrophe. Damien was tall, sharp-dressed, and carried an air of ruthless efficiency that made most people uncomfortable. He placed a sleek black briefcase on the desk and opened it with deliberate precision, pulling out a tablet and a stack of documents. "I've reviewed the situation," Damien began, his voice calm but edged with authority. "Your systems are compromised beyond repair. Whoever is behind this isn't just skilled, they're meticulous. They've left no obvious traces, and their actions are timed to inflict maximum damage." Sophia sat stiffly on the couch, her arms crossed as she tried to maintain some semblance of control. "There has to be a way to stop them," she said. "This sabotage can't be completely untraceable." Damien gave her a measured look. "With enough time and resources, perhaps we could pinpoint the source. But even if we find them, the damage is done. Your investors are gone, your reputation is in shambles, and your systems are bleeding money every second they remain operational." Julian slammed his fist on the desk, his frustration boiling over. "We need to turn this around. I didn't bring you here for a post-mortem. I want solutions." Damien didn't flinch. "The only solution at this point is damage control. Cut your losses, salvage what you can, and prepare for the fallout. The media is already sniffing around. If they uncover the full extent of this collapse, you'll be lucky to avoid criminal charges." Sophia's face paled. "Criminal charges? For what?" Damien's gaze was unflinching. "Fraud, misrepresentation, misuse of investor funds. Even if some of it was unintentional, it won't matter once the story breaks. And if the person behind this decides to go public with their evidence, well, let's just say it won't end well for either of you." Sophia and Julian exchanged a look, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. For years they had operated with the confidence of untouchable power players, believing their cunning and ambition would shield them from consequences. Now they were realizing just how vulnerable they truly were. Damien gathered his materials and stood. "I'll continue monitoring the situation and do what I can to contain the fallout. But if I were you, I'd start preparing for the worst." After Damien left, Julian sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. "We're finished," he muttered. "Everything we worked for, gone?" Sophia stared at him, her anger bubbling to the surface. "Don't you dare sit there and act like you're a victim in this. You wanted to push Liam out. You thought you could outsmart him. And you went along with it." Julian shot back. "You're the one who brought him into this in the first place. If you'd kept your personal life out of our business, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess." Sophia stood, her voice trembling with fury. "You think this is my fault? You're the one who treated him like a disposable resource. You're the one who—" "Enough!" Julian yelled, his voice echoing through the penthouse. "It doesn't matter whose fault it is. We're done, Sophia. And if you think Liam's going to stop with the company, you're delusional." Sophia's chest tightened at his words. She didn't want to admit it, but Julian was right. Liam had already proven he was capable of dismantling everything they had built. What if he decided to take things even further? Liam watched their argument unfold on his monitors, his expression unreadable. He had installed the surveillance cameras months ago, anticipating the need for leverage. Now they served as a window into the chaos he had created. He leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with the final steps of his plan. The collapse of Auraverse was only the beginning. Julian and Sophia had taken so much from him, his trust, his time, his dignity. He wouldn't be satisfied until they understood the full weight of their betrayal. That evening, Liam sent a carefully crafted email to a select group of journalists and tech influencers. The email contained a trove of evidence: financial documents, incriminating emails, and even security footage of Sophia and Julian plotting to edge him out of the company. The email's subject line was simple and devastating: the truth behind Auraverse's collapse. He knew the story would spread like wildfire. The tech industry thrived on scandal, and this one had all the ingredients to dominate headlines for weeks. By morning, Sophia and Julian would be pariahs, their names synonymous with greed and betrayal. Satisfied, Liam closed his laptop and stood, stretching his stiff muscles. The quiet coder they had dismissed was gone. In his place stood a man who had taken control of his destiny, who had turned their schemes against them with precision and patience. The next morning the fallout began. Headlines blared across every major tech and financial news outlet. Auraverse founders exposed: scandal, sabotage, and betrayal. Leaked documents reveal financial mismanagement and infidelity. How a quiet coder took down a tech empire. Sophia's phone buzzed incessantly, each notification another blow to her already fragile composure. Investors, former colleagues, and even friends bombarded her with questions and accusations. Her social media accounts were flooded with vitriol, her reputation shredded beyond repair. Julian fared no better. His office was besieged by reporters, his phone ringing non-stop with calls he couldn't answer. His carefully curated image of success and sophistication had been obliterated, replaced by the reality of a man undone by his own hubris. By noon, their remaining employees had resigned, their contracts cancelled, and their bank accounts frozen. Auraverse was officially dead, its collapse a cautionary tale for an industry that thrived on ambition and ruthlessness. Sophia and Julian, once the golden pair of the tech world, were now alone, their empire reduced to ashes. And in his quiet office, Liam watched it all unfold, his expression calm, his satisfaction complete. They had underestimated him. They had taken everything from him. But now they knew the truth: the quiet ones were the most dangerous of all. Sophia sat in her now nearly empty apartment, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. The headline from a tech news site stared back at her: "Betrayed Genius Turns Tables on Auraverse Founders. The Ultimate Revenge Story." She could barely read the article through the tears blurring her vision. Every detail of her betrayal and downfall was laid bare: emails, financial misconduct, and even security footage of her and Julian in compromising situations. The video of her cruel dismissal of Liam at their own dining table was now circulating widely. The comments on the article were brutal, ripping apart her character, her decisions, and her morality. Her phone buzzed yet again. She hesitated before picking it up, her hands trembling. "This is Sophia," she said, trying to muster some semblance of strength. "Miss Carter, this is Jeff Simmons from National Business Daily," came the voice on the other end. "Would you care to comment on the recent revelations about Auraverse? Particularly the accusations of fraud and your role in—" Sophia hung up, throwing the phone onto the couch. It felt like everyone in the world was pointing fingers at her, judging her. She looked around the small apartment, a far cry from the luxury home she once shared with Liam. Her designer clothes hung limply in an open suitcase on the floor. The remnants of her once glamorous life mocked her now. She thought about Liam, the man she had underestimated and discarded. She had always seen him as a steady rock, dependable but uninspiring. She never imagined he could be capable of such calculated destruction. The thought made her stomach twist. Liam had been quiet, yes, but never weak. Julian sat in his darkened office, a near-empty bottle of scotch on the desk in front of him. His laptop showed the same headlines, the same damning evidence. He clenched his jaw as he scrolled through the emails Liam had leaked. His investors, his former colleagues, and even some of his friends had sent scathing replies, cutting ties with him entirely. His phone rang again, this time showing the name of his corporate fixer, Damien Cole. "Damien," Julian growled, picking up the call. "What the hell is happening? I thought you were supposed to fix this." "There's nothing to fix," Damien said flatly. "You've been completely exposed. Every skeleton in your closet is now public knowledge. Your investors are gone. Your accounts are frozen. Even the SEC is opening an investigation into your dealings. You're finished, Julian." Julian slammed his fist on the desk. "There has to be something we can do." Damien's voice remained cold. "My advice? Lawyer up and prepare for damage control. This is beyond saving. The line went dead, leaving Julian alone with his rage. He hurled the bottle of scotch across the room, watching as it shattered against the wall. "Damn you, Liam," he shouted, his voice echoing in the empty space. In his private workspace, Liam leaned back in his chair, sipping coffee as he watched the fallout unfold on multiple screens. The chaos he had orchestrated was running smoothly, every piece falling into place. He monitored Julian's desperate attempts to salvage his reputation, watched Sophia's tearful calls to anyone who might help her. They were utterly alone, isolated by their own betrayals and lies. A notification popped up on his screen, a new message from his private investigator. Subject: SEC investigation into Julian Locke. Liam opened the file, scanning the contents. The SEC had officially launched an inquiry into Julian's financial dealings. The evidence Liam had anonymously provided was thorough enough to ensure Julian would face criminal charges. He would be tied up in legal battles for years, his career in ruins. Satisfied, Liam turned to another screen, this one showing Sophia's latest activity. She had sent out multiple emails to former investors and industry contacts, begging for help. Each message had been intercepted and rerouted to a private server Liam controlled. He read the emails with detached curiosity, noting how her tone had shifted from confident to desperate. She was learning the hard way that bridges burned were not easily rebuilt. Sophia couldn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch, scrolling through the hateful comments on social media. They called her a fraud, a liar, a cheat. Every word felt like a knife to her already wounded pride. Her thoughts drifted to Liam, the man she had dismissed so easily. She remembered the quiet nights when he worked tirelessly to build Auraverse, the way he had supported her without question. And how had she repaid him? By betraying him, mocking him, and building a life with Julian. She picked up her phone and stared at Liam's contact. She hadn't spoken to him since their confrontation in his office, but now, more than ever, she needed to hear his voice. Her finger hovered over the call button before she pressed it. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. "Liam, it's me," she began, her voice cracking. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know I never meant to hurt you like this." Her words hung in the air as she paused, unsure of what else to say. "You were right," she continued softly. "About everything. I was selfish. I thought I could have it all, but now I see how wrong I was. I lost the best thing I ever had. I hope someday you'll understand." She ended the call and set the phone down, burying her face in her hands. For the first time in years she felt truly alone. Liam listened to the voicemail later that night, his expression unreadable. He didn't delete it immediately, but neither did he respond. Her apology, while sincere, didn't change the past. It didn't erase the betrayal, the lies, or the months he had spent planning his revenge. The truth was, Liam didn't need her apology. He had moved beyond the pain she caused, using it as fuel to rebuild himself. Sophia and Julian's downfall was complete, but Liam's story was far from over. He closed his laptop, turning off the surveillance feeds for the first time in weeks. The quiet coder they had underestimated was gone, replaced by a man who had reclaimed his power, his dignity, and his future. As he stood in the dim light of his office, a rare smile crossed his lips. They had thought they could break him. Instead, they had forged him into something far stronger. The days that followed marked the true unraveling of Sophia and Julian's lives. The media frenzy over Auraverse's collapse grew louder, with headlines plastered across every major outlet. Sophia's name, once associated with cutting-edge innovation, became a symbol of deceit and failure. Julian's reputation as a suave venture capitalist was obliterated, replaced by an image of greed and arrogance. Sophia sat in her apartment, staring at the eviction notice pinned to her fridge. She had just returned from a humiliating meeting at a boutique retail job she'd managed to secure, a far cry from the high-powered world she once ruled. Her boss, a woman half her age, had spent most of the meeting lecturing her about professionalism. Sophia had swallowed her pride, knowing she had no other options. The knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find a manila envelope sitting on the welcome mat. Her heart sank as she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single-page legal notice informing her that her divorce from Liam had been finalized. Attached was a list of assets, what little she had left, and a handwritten note. "You always said I lived off your success. Now let's see how well you live without mine. Oh. Her knees buckled and she sank to the floor, clutching the paper. Liam's words, once quiet and supportive, had turned sharp and unrelenting. He hadn't just walked away from their life, he had erased her from it entirely. Across town, Julian was facing his own reckoning. The SEC investigation had gained traction, and the walls were closing in. He sat in his lawyer's office, surrounded by stacks of documents outlining years of financial misdeeds. Damien Cole, the fixer who had once promised to help, had disappeared, leaving Julian to fend for himself. His lawyer, an older man with a grim expression, shuffled through the papers. "Julian, I won't sugarcoat this. The evidence against you is overwhelming. Fraud, misrepresentation, tax evasion. It's all here." Julian clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "There has to be a way out of this. I've worked too hard to lose everything." The lawyer looked at him with pity. "The only thing you've worked hard at is digging your own grave. My advice? Cooperate. It's your only chance at reducing the sentence." Julian's stomach churned. The idea of prison, of losing not just his career but his freedom, was unbearable. Yet he knew there was no escape. The life he had built on lies and manipulation was crumbling around him, and the one man responsible for it all was out of reach. In his corner office on the 42nd floor of Hayes Technology Tower, Liam sat at his desk, reviewing the quarterly reports for his latest AI project. The view from his floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, a constant reminder of how far he had come. The company had grown exponentially over the past 5 years, its reputation built on Liam's expertise and ethical approach. Developers flocked to work under him, knowing they would be treated with respect and fairness. Liam's quiet brilliance had become a beacon in the tech industry, a stark contrast to the chaos he had left behind. A knock at the door drew his attention. His assistant, Sarah, stepped inside, carrying a tray with coffee and a folder. "Morning, Mr. Hayes," she said with a warm smile. "The team finalized the preliminary results for the quantum encryption project. I thought you'd want to review them before the board meeting." Liam nodded, taking the folder. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll go over them now." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "Oh, and there's a reporter from Tech Weekly who's been asking for an interview. They want to feature you in their Innovators of the Year series." Liam leaned back in his chair, considering the request. He had always preferred to let his work speak for itself, avoiding the limelight whenever possible. But this time he nodded. "Schedule it. It's time people understood the importance of protecting the quiet ones." Sarah smiled. "Of course. I'll arrange it." As she left, Liam opened the folder, his focus shifting back to the project at hand. But a notification on his phone caught his attention. It was a news alert about Julian Locke, detailing the SEC's formal charges and his impending trial. Liam read the headline without emotion, then swiped it away. He had no interest in Julian's downfall beyond what had already been achieved. The man's name was now synonymous with fraud, and his legacy would be one of disgrace. That was enough. Sophia's days became a blur of mundane tasks and growing despair. The boutique job barely covered her rent, and her attempts to reconnect with former colleagues were met with silence. She had tried to rebuild, but every door she knocked on remained firmly shut. Her name carried too much baggage, her reputation irreparably tarnished. One evening she sat on her couch, scrolling through social media. A post caught her eye, a feature on Liam Hayes, the silent innovator who had revolutionized the tech industry. The article praised his ethical leadership, his groundbreaking work in AI, and his commitment to protecting developers. Sophia stared at his photo, her heart aching with regret. She remembered the nights he spent working tirelessly on Auraverse, the quiet passion he poured into every line of code. She had dismissed him as boring, as someone who would never understand her ambition. Now she realized he had always been the stronger one. She wanted to reach out, to apologize again, but she knew it was pointless. Liam had moved on, building a life far beyond anything she could touch. He was no longer the man she had betrayed. He was something greater. In the quiet of his home office that night, Liam sat before a bank of monitors, the soft glow illuminating his face. The surveillance feeds were long gone, the chapter of Sophia and Julian closed. But his work continued, protecting the quiet ones who lived in the shadows of ambitious dreamers like them. His phone buzzed with a message from his mother, Margaret. "Dinner on Sunday? Bring dessert this time. Love you." Liam smiled, typing a quick reply. His relationship with his mother had been one of the few constants in his life, her strength and resilience inspiring him through the darkest times. She had taught him the value of perseverance, and he had taken that lesson to heart. As he leaned back in his chair, he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The man he had become was far from the quiet coder Sophia and Julian had dismissed. He was a force, a protector, and a man who had turned betrayal into purpose. And as the city lights twinkled beyond his window, Liam knew one thing for certain: the quiet ones were never to be underestimated. Julian sat in his holding cell, the fluorescent lights overhead casting harsh shadows across the barren walls. The scotch and suits were gone, replaced by the dull gray of a prison jumpsuit. His face was gaunt, his once confident demeanor shattered. He had spent days enduring interrogations, his every defense torn apart by investigators armed with the evidence Liam had provided. He thought about the life he had built, no, the life he had stolen, and how it had crumbled so completely. The lavish parties, the private jets, the high-powered deals, it was all a distant memory now. His empire was dust, his name a symbol of failure. He had tried to play the game, tried to manipulate those around him, but in the end he had been outmatched. Liam, the man he had dismissed as nothing more than a coder, had proven to be far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Across town, Sophia sat at the small desk in her studio apartment, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. She had spent the day applying for jobs, sending out resumes to anyone who would take a chance on her. Each rejection stung more than the last, a stark reminder of how far she had fallen. Her phone buzzed and she hesitated before picking it up. It was a notification from a news app. SEC announces plea deal in Julian Locke case. Former venture capitalist to serve 15 years in federal prison. Sophia's heart sank as she read the article. Julian's downfall was complete, and though she had tried to distance herself from him, her own role in the Auraverse scandal ensured she wasn't far behind. Her reputation had been dragged through the mud, her connections severed. Even her closest friends had turned their backs on her. She thought about Liam, how he had quietly, methodically dismantled everything she and Julian had built. He had been the architect of their success and now he was the architect of their ruin. She couldn't blame him, not really. She had underestimated him, betrayed him, and taken him for granted. This was the price of her choices. Liam sat in his office, reviewing the latest reports from Hayes Technologies' newest project. The company had expanded rapidly in the past 5 years, its influence growing across the tech industry. Liam had earned a reputation as a leader who valued innovation and integrity, a man who protected his employees and fought against exploitation. His phone buzzed and he glanced at the screen. It was a message from David Chin, his longtime friend and now the head of Hayes Technologies' security division. Heard about Julian's plea deal. Thought you'd want to know. Liam replied with a simple, thanks, then set the phone down. He felt no satisfaction in Julian's sentencing, only a quiet sense of closure. The man who had tried to take everything from him was now facing the consequences of his actions. That was enough. As he leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifted to the city skyline outside his window. He thought about the path that had brought him here, the betrayals he had endured, and the strength he had found in their wake. He had turned pain into purpose, building something that mattered, something that would endure. Sophia sat in her apartment, scrolling through the news. Another article about Liam caught her eye. Liam Hayes, the quiet innovator who reshaped the tech industry. The piece described his rise to prominence, his groundbreaking work in AI, and his unwavering commitment to ethical practices. It praised him as a visionary, a man who had not only survived betrayal but thrived in its aftermath. Sophia couldn't help but feel a pang of regret as she read the article. She thought about the life they had shared, the dreams they had built together, and the choices that had torn them apart. She had thought she could find something better, something more exciting, but in the end, she had lost everything. Her hand hovered over her phone as she considered calling him, reaching out one last time. But she knew it was too late. Liam had moved on, built a life far beyond her reach. All she could do now was live with the consequences of her actions. Liam's office was quiet as the day wound down. He reviewed the final documents for a new partnership with a promising startup, one that had approached him seeking protection from predatory investors. He had made it his mission to support the quiet ones, the developers and innovators who worked behind the scenes, often overshadowed by those who took the credit. As he signed the documents, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from his mother. "Dinner Sunday. Don't forget dessert. Sarah might stop by." He smiled, typing a quick reply. Margaret Hayes had been a constant source of strength and wisdom in his life, her resilience shaping him into the man he had become. She had taught him that the world wasn't fair, but it was up to him to carve out his place in it. The quiet coder they had underestimated was gone. In his place stood a man who had turned betrayal into power, pain into purpose. Liam Hayes had found his strength in silence, and now he used that strength to protect others. As the city lights twinkled beyond his window, Liam closed his laptop and stood, ready to face whatever came next. The chapter of Sophia and Julian was closed, but his story was far from over. The weekend brought a rare moment of calm for Liam. He visited his mother's bakery, a bustling establishment that had grown into a local favorite. Margaret was in her element, greeting customers and overseeing her staff with the same energy she'd had years ago when she rebuilt her life from nothing. "You're looking well," Margaret said as Liam entered, setting down a tray of freshly baked pastries. "How's work?" Liam smiled faintly. "Busy as always, but good." Margaret wiped her hands on her apron and studied him for a moment. "And how's everything else? Any time for yourself?" Liam hesitated, then shook his head. "Not much. I have the company to focus on." Margaret sighed. "Liam, you've built an incredible career. But you can't let the past define your future. You deserve more than just work." Her words lingered with him as he returned home that evening. He had spent so much time building Hayes Technology, ensuring no one else could exploit or betray him the way Sophia and Julian had. But Margaret's reminder echoed in his mind. Was he truly moving forward, or had he built walls so high that no one could ever reach him again? Elsewhere, Sophia faced another rejection. She had applied for a role at a small tech startup in Phoenix, hoping to find a way back into the industry. The response was polite but firm. Her name was too tainted, her history too controversial. She set the email aside and stared out the window of her tiny apartment, the weight of her isolation pressing down on her. She thought about the last time she had been truly happy, before Julian, before Auriverse's rise and fall. Her thoughts kept circling back to Liam, to the quiet strength he had always shown. She had taken him for granted, dismissed him as unremarkable, but now she realized just how much she had underestimated him. Her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a news alert about Hayes Technology's latest partnership, a glowing article praising Liam's leadership and vision. The photo accompanying the piece showed him standing confidently in his office, a stark contrast to the man she had once known. For a brief moment she considered reaching out again, but she stopped herself. She had already said her piece and Liam owed her nothing. Whatever they had shared was gone, replaced by the unshakable reality of her mistakes. Liam spent the following week immersed in the quantum encryption project, a groundbreaking initiative that promised to redefine cybersecurity. His team worked tirelessly, driven by the sense of purpose he had instilled in them. Hayes Technology had become a haven for innovators, a place where talent was nurtured and valued. One afternoon, David Chin stopped by Liam's office, a stack of reports in hand. "The project's moving faster than expected," David said, setting the files on Liam's desk. "We're ahead of schedule." Liam nodded, scanning the reports. "Good work, David. Keep pushing forward." David hesitated, then added, "By the way, I heard about Julian's sentencing. 15 years, he won't be rebuilding anytime soon." Liam's expression didn't change. "That chapter's closed. He made his choices and now he's facing the consequences." David studied him for a moment. "You've come a long way since then. But sometimes I wonder if you ever really moved on." Liam looked up, his gaze steady. "I moved on the day I decided to rebuild, David. The rest is just ensuring no one else goes through what I did." David nodded, understanding the weight behind Liam's words. "Fair enough. But if you ever need a reminder of what you've built, just look around. You've done something remarkable here." As Liam walked through the halls of Hayes Technology that evening, he thought about David's words. The company was thriving, its employees inspired and loyal. He had created something meaningful, something lasting. Yet Margaret's voice lingered in his mind. "You deserve more than just work." Liam returned to his office, his thoughts heavy. He looked at the skyline beyond his window, the city lights flickering like stars. For the first time in years, he wondered if there was room in his life for something beyond his carefully guarded fortress. But for now he turned back to his desk, his focus returning to the work that had become his sanctuary. The quiet coder had risen, transforming pain into purpose and betrayal into strength. His journey wasn't over, it had only just begun. As the screen fades to black, Liam's reflection in the glass window lingers. A man who had been underestimated, betrayed, and dismissed, yet who had risen stronger than ever. His journey serves as a testament to the quiet strength that lies within, the power of resilience, and the transformative force of calculated vengeance. This is where our story ends, but we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think of Liam's transformation? Do you believe his actions were justified, or do you think he went too far? Have you ever underestimated someone only to realize later how wrong you were? Let us know. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Midnight Affair Tales. Click on the next video on your screen and we'll see you there.